everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tracy Cook, and I'm the Online Media Manager for ModernAnalyst.com, the premier community for business analysts. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar entitled, What's Hot and What's Not? Trends in the World of Business Analysis. Today's featured speaker is Elizabeth Larson, PMP, CBAP, CSM, Co-Principal and CEO of Watermark Learning. The webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, including the question and answer session at the end. Please be sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature of the GoToWebinar software. I'd like to say thank you to Watermark Learning for sponsoring this event. And now I'd like to introduce Sandy to Shannon from Watermark Learning to get us started.
Welcome everyone. My name is Sandy to Shannon, and I'm Senior Account Manager for Watermark Learning. And Watermark has delivered training, coaching, and certification preparation in business analysis, Agile, project management, and other related areas since 1992. We're recognized thought leaders in these fields and have uniquely contributed to both the BA as well as the PM bodies of knowledge. We provide a very unique blend of teaching industry standards with a practical application. Our instructors energize and prepare people to solve business problems and achieve certification success. And we have trained well over 60,000 students in our live, as well as our virtual online and anytime learning self-study courses. Our training features real-life workshops, and students leave class immediately able to apply their new skills. We do also provide certificate programs with Auburn University in our core topics, and we have just updated our BA certificate programming, including an awesome Agile BA course. Classes start October 22nd for that. Watermark is also the #1 provider of certification preparation training and support for BAs, as well as project managers who are pursuing their CBAP, CCBA, ECBA, BRMP, IIBA, AAC, or the PMI PBA certifications, as well as others. And we offer many renowned certification products and prep classes. Our online study exams are used by people in 109 countries around the world, and we've helped thousands of people achieve their IIBA certifications. No one else is even close to our success. Today's speaker, Elizabeth Larson, is co-principal and CEO of Watermark Learning and has over 30 years of thought leadership and experience in business analysis and project management. Elizabeth's speaking history includes repeat keynotes and presentations for national as well as international conferences on 5 different continents. Elizabeth has co-authored 5 books as well as numerous articles that have appeared regularly in Modern Analyst and elsewhere. Elizabeth was a lead author and expert reviewer on both the Babok and PMBOK guides, as well as PMI's BA Practice Guide and Guide to Business Analysis. Now I'd like to turn over the presentation to Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Sandy and Tracy. I really am delighted to be here. So there is a lot going on in our industry, way more than I could possibly go over today. So I've chosen 5 trends in business analysis. So we'll talk about those trends, concentrating on what is our role and what does all of this mean to all of us, any of us who practice business analysis. So I'm just going to read the trends and then we'll go over each one in detail. Trend number 1, the digital BA. Trend number 2, our role in a DevOps environment. Trend number 3, certifications in the gig economy. Trend number 4, Agile business cases. And trend number 5, the Agile BA. So number 1, the digital BA. I want to answer the question, what is the digital BA? Because there is so much being written about, talked about. The subject is popular at conferences, the digital BA, and it seems to mean different things to different people. So from my perspective, what I mean by the digital BA is someone, and this is going to be a BA who has more rather than less experience, someone who is strategically focused, who can really help the organization through the digital transformation. It is someone who can really help figure out what is the best approach for the organization and how can they best take advantage of the digital technologies such as robotics, RPA, such as predictive analytics and the cognitive technologies of machine learning and artificial intelligence, AI. I came across this organizational chart. Let's see if this looks familiar to you. We have a chief digital officer, and reporting to that person, we have VPs of hype and disruption and buzzwords. And reporting to those people, we have directors of strategy and ambiguity and shiny new things, overpromise. And all of these positions have been filled. The only one that's vacant is the person responsible for getting anything done. So I often get asked the question, what is the difference between a digital BA and an everyday normal BA doing BA work? And the answer is, to me, it's a matter of degree. Because as a digital BA, we're still going to be doing business analysis and we're still going to be doing many BA tasks. We're going to be using many of the same techniques and we're going to need to have many of the same competencies. It's just that today, in today's world, is just so much more complex. So there are some differences. Here are 3 things to talk about. The first is what we need to know. Now, we've always needed expertise, right? Business expertise and technical expertise. I have always maintained that the more technical expertise we have and the more business expertise we have, the more we're going to be able to do our jobs. And by doing our jobs, I'm going to take this from IIBA's BABOK, a guide to the business analysis body of knowledge. In sum, our job is to define the business problem and recommend solutions that add value to our stakeholders. In other words, we are high-level management consultants. We are the trusted advisor. If we're going to provide good advice, we need to know what we're talking about. And that means that we're going to have to get into some things that some of us have never needed to know before. A lot more technical and statistical. I mean, look at these words up here, words that I never knew before I started looking into this stuff. Linear regression outfitting, gradient descent, k-nearest neighbors. I mean, the word algorithm was one that just sent shivers of terror up and down my spine. We're going to need, if we're going to provide advice, we need to know about the algorithms that are going to drive the predictive models. We're going to just need to know more about the digital technologies. We've always needed to get a handle on what are the impacts of what we're doing and what are the dependencies and what are the risks. We need to absolutely do that as digital BAs, but when we think about it, if we don't know what we're talking about, the risks, the consequences of our advice could be dire. The degree of security requirement. Now, we've always needed to get those security requirements, right? Part of our non-functional requirements. We've always needed to ask our stakeholders the crud, right? Who's going to create the data? Who's going to read it? Who's going to update it? And who's going to delete it? I don't know about you, but for me on my projects, they were almost an afterthought, those non-functional requirements, and we attended to them after we did the fun part. I was involved in a lot of developing application systems using new technology, and that was the fun part. And oh yeah, I guess we better get our non-functional requirements, and oh yeah, I guess we better figure out the security from a data perspective. That's different. Data security, the stakeholders are front and center. It's a huge part of our digital projects. I mean, cybersecurity, we have to be concerned about digital trust, making sure that our organization understands.
Hi, Elizabeth. Sorry, this is Tracy. We're having just a little bit of trouble hearing you. Elizabeth, I'm going to direct you to the chat box, and for our audience, please just bear with us for a moment. Thank you.
The additional stakeholders, and I'm sorry, I was having just a little bit of technical difficulties, so if I cut out on you, I am sorry. I think I'm back.
You are.
So that's good. Okay, there are also some different or additional stakeholders, or we need to think about stakeholders, not just our security stakeholders, but think about them perhaps in a different way. We have to focus on our end customers, and those end customers could be all over the globe with different cultures and different things that excite them about applications, and we need to think about that customer experience. Now, we have always needed to identify our stakeholders. We have always needed to define the roles and responsibilities and figure out where our customers are and what is the best way to communicate with them, and we still need to do that. Think about, if you will, because I think that there is confusion out in the industry. What is the difference, if you're thinking about roles and responsibilities, between a business analyst, a data analyst, and a data scientist? And how are we going to figure, if we're confused, and I've been seeing a lot of confusion between a business analyst and a data scientist, and that is confusion that is not going to bode well for digital projects. If we're a little bit confused, how is our organization going to be able to distinguish? How are we going to talk to each other? And as if that weren't bad enough, what about machines? I came across this article in Harvard Business Review a little over a year ago, and I was just fascinated by it. They said in the not too distant future, and they didn't find what they meant by the not too distant future, but they said AI will be more than a tool. In many cases, AI will be our coworker and a ubiquitous part of our lives. And I got to thinking about, well, how do we define roles and responsibilities with machines? Or what about interpersonal skills? It's going to be very different. It seems to me that given what needs to happen as an organization goes through the digital transformation, they are absolutely going to need our help. And I'm happy to see that more and more organizations are recognizing that they need business analysis skills to help them through. This is just a snippet of what I found on Indeed.com relating to wanting digital BAs. Trend number 2, DevOps and our role in a DevOps environment. Like the term digital BA, it just seems that every organization has a different understanding of what DevOps is. I mean, they're using that term differently. DevOps has been described as an example, a mindset, a collaboration, a sea change of organizational cultural change, and those are fine, but they apply to many things, including Agile is all those things. A definition that to me comes a little bit closer is it's been defined as a collaboration between an Agile development team and operations. I think what DevOps is trying to do is to support continuous delivery so that we can avoid the delays that occur. I mean, we could have very quick iterations and produce product increments very quickly, let's say every couple of weeks, only to suffer delays because of other IT areas. And it's been this way for a very long time. I remember working on a large project in the mid-1990s. We were developing it using RAD, Rapid Application Development, the precursor to Agile. And we had taken this large project and broken it down into small pieces, and part of it were the interfaces, getting data from other systems and getting data to other systems. And some of these were really small. And we went up in front of the implementation team. They were called director representatives from other areas. And we said, okay, to mitigate risk, we're going to do these very, very small pieces, and we want to implement them every week. And almost in unison, they said, no, you can't do that. Every time you implement anything, even if it's really small, you are putting the production environment at risk. Okay, well, back in 2010, when I first became a CSM, Certified Scrum Master, that was a huge topic. The same thing was a huge topic on discussion boards. I mean, there were a lot of articles and blogs and everything written about what is best? What do we do? Do we produce product increments every couple of weeks and then implement them and risk the stability of the operational environment, or do we hold them until we have a release, in which case they're bigger, and that's more risk, as well as customers are not going to get their value. So that was a big discussion. I believe that that's what DevOps is addressing. That's what DevOps does well. And one of the ways it supports this continuous delivery is through a tool chain. A tool chain is a set of automated tools. I remember, gee, it must have been about 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a Scrum user group meeting, and the presenter was talking about many things, including in his organization, which was an early adopter of Agile, and they were very mature in their Agile adoption, they had 1-week sprints. And again, this was about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was amazed. I remember thinking, 1-week sprints, I mean, most of us are trying to get our heads wrapped around the idea of a 2-week sprint. And afterwards, I went up to him and I said, well, how do you do that? And he said, well, we couldn't do that without automated testing tools. And so we started talking about the bad old days and how hard regression testing was, and then integration and version control and configuration management. And even if we had good automated tools, how did we know that when we put something into production, it was actually working? So the monitoring tools DevOps has this tool chain which addresses these issues. So where does the BA fit in? I think we have such a major role, or we could have such a major role. First thing is, I think people agree fairly unanimously that it doesn't make sense to implement these tools in a willy-nilly, haphazard fashion, that we need a tool chain strategy. Who would be better in the organization than a BA? We know the business, we know technical. Then to develop the strategy, to do the RFP work, to select vendors, to implement. I mean, I just think we are absolutely perfect. We're very experienced in this, and we would do a really great job helping the organization adopt a DevOps environment and these tool chains. But as we know, all the beautiful tools in the world are not going to help us with delays when our organization is siloed. Yeah, we should work collaboratively, and that would be wonderful in the ideal world to not have any silos. But how many of us work in or live in an ideal world? So for many of us, these exist. And delays, many delays occur because decisions have to be made and because issues have to be resolved among all the different areas. And it just takes time to go up and down the silos and across, and there are politics and whatnot. Again, I think that the BA is in a really good position to help the organization understand why we need representatives, why we need people on the team up front so that decisions can be made as we're going through our iterations, getting people up front. And if there is conflict, if there are differences of opinion, BAs are in a perfect position to facilitate, to get them resolved quickly. So I really do see us having a major role in a DevOps environment. Trend number 3, certifications in the gig economy. The gig economy, sometimes called freelance. Recently, it's been called the hustle economy. That's not my favorite term, so I'm going to go back and forth between gig and freelance. Last year, I talked about the gig economy, and I said that I thought that there were lots of opportunities for BAs who, for whatever reason, didn't want to or couldn't work in large organizations with lots of BAs. I said there were opportunities because most jobs are being created by small businesses. In the United States, 95% of all new jobs are being created by small businesses, and that's defined as businesses under about $40 million. Organizations like Watermark, I mean, we're really kind of like not just a small business, we're a micro business. We do a lot of projects, and we know we need both BAs and PMs. I mean, we've tried it without either one. Our projects didn't get done or they got done wrong, and so we know we need both, but there is no way we're hiring full-time people. We hire people that we've worked with in the past for these gigs, for these short-term stints. And when they're done, they go off to other things. It's worked out really well for us. Last year, I introduced the concept of the full stack BA. And I based that on the concept of a full stack developer, because we have a lot of website work that needs to be done. Well, a full stack developer can design the website, implement the website, but also take care of the back-end database and attach the back-end database to the front-end web. I mean, full stack, from beginning to the end. These people, as we found out, are in very high demand, low supply, and they're making obscene amounts of money. So I got to thinking, well, what about a full stack BA in the gig economy? It probably means that we're going to need to take on some skills that we never thought we'd want to or that we may not want to have. So for BAs, yeah, we're probably going to have to do some project management work, and we're probably going to have to do some testing, maybe even some back-end SQL. But the more skills we have, the more employable we're going to be out in the freelance economy. Which brings us to certifications. Well, about two and a half years ago, I talked about certifications. The trend that I mentioned then, I called it a schizophrenic approach to certifications. And I used the dictionary definition of schizophrenic, not the clinical definition, but the other one. Two contradictory forces or currents coming together at the same time. And the two forces that I felt were coming together at the same time, on the one hand, you had individuals and organizations who felt that certifications were worthwhile. And on the other hand, you had those who thought they weren't worthwhile, weren't worth the time and the money. I said I thought it was going to take a couple of years for things to shake out, that the needle was right smack in the middle, but I felt back then that it was leaning towards less formality and fewer certifications. Well, here we are about two and a half years later, and things have changed, and that needle has definitely moved over towards needing certifications. I think there are several contributing factors, but I think two big ones are, one, a couple of years ago, we didn't realize just how popular Agile certifications were going to be. And the other is the gig economy, because people are recognizing that, yeah, they probably should be certified if they're going to go out and try and look for jobs. My one caveat is, when I look at a resume and I see someone's name and I see 35 professional designations, I exaggerate only slightly, after the person's name, I say to myself, this person is really good at taking exams, but can they get the work done? Okay, trend number 4, Agile business cases. It seems to me today that many organizations don't want to spend a lot of time, a lot of resources, maybe months, working on a business case for a multi-year project where the return on investment, ROI, the payback extends out years. They are looking for quick value. When I talk about business cases, I sometimes get pushback from people on Agile teams. Hey, we're on an Agile team. We don't need to do business cases. We never do. We just wouldn't be doing business cases. So my rhetorical question is, are business cases needed on Agile projects? And you know my answer, it's going to be a resounding yes, exclamation mark. All projects, whether they're large or small, regardless of the methodology that you're using, regardless of the complexity, have to answer some basic questions. Question number one, what is the business problem we're trying to solve? Question number two, how bad is that problem because organizations have lots and lots of problems and we can't resolve them all? Question number three, is it worthwhile to the organization to resolve that problem? That is the business case. The thing is, today, many organizations are choosing not to do the business case on the entire pie, so to speak, but on the individual slices. Now, how big or how small those slices are, that's kind of organizational dependent. So I can't tell you that it has to be here or here or here. I will say that I've been hearing more and more doing the business case at product roadmap time. But again, that's not any kind of a rule or hard and fast anything. All business cases have some common components. Now, people come to me. I sponsor a lot of projects and they come to me all the time with solutions, not surprising. I mean, even other members of the management team come to me, we have to do this, we need to do this or that. And they already know what I'm going to ask. I'm going to say, well, what problem are we trying to solve? And once we know that, the next question I'm always going to ask is, how much is it going to cost? What value are we going to get from this? When am I going to get the value? So what value is the benefits? When am I going to get it? Is the ROI? How feasible? I could talk for another hour just on feasibility. There are lots of different kinds of feasibility. We have to worry about our schedule. Are we going to be able to do it in time? The technology, do we have the technology to do it? Or operationally, can we support and sell the new thing and the old? So how feasible is it? And then the risks, those potential events that could get in the way of providing the value. So all business cases, large or small, formal or informal, mountains of paperwork or almost none, have these components. So how are Agile business cases any different? I just think the whole structure of Agile, it's set up to make these things easier. First of all, I think costs are so much easier. My background, specifically, I was a BA for over 10 years and a project manager for almost 15. And as a project manager, I struggled with costs. I remember one time I was working on a very large project and the sponsor said to me, Elizabeth, when's this going to be done? How much is it going to cost? And I said, after he said, you know, I have to put money in the budget for it, I said, well, I'll let you know after the analysis work, the business analysis work is done. Oh boy, that did not go over well. He was very upset and I don't blame him. That was a terrible thing to say. He said, Elizabeth, you're not providing good customer service, and he was absolutely right. So then I went to rough orders of magnitude. Remember, this won't be cast in concrete and I could be off by hundreds of %, but this is what I think it is right now, but it's going to change. It always did get cast in concrete. Doing the estimating iteratively as we do on Agile projects is just so much easier. It's just so much easier. And the benefits, doing them iteratively, the whole structure, having product owners prioritize and figuring out what the value is to them, you don't have to struggle with the benefits. I know for me as a BA, I would go to the sponsor and I would say, okay, well, what are the benefits? And I was told, well, that's your job. You go out and get the benefits. And then as soon as I did, somehow I learned early on that he or she who articulated the benefits owned not just the project, but this solution. So I've worked on one system that was known as Elizabeth Systems for years after I left the company. It's just much easier in Agile. We're going to get our value quicker. And that's one of the beautiful things from the organizational perspective, from a sponsor perspective. I'm going to get that value sooner. And I'm going to know if there's anything untoward, any risks, or if it's not feasible sooner than later, fewer sunk costs. Well, our last trend has to do with Agile business analysis. Are we, BAs, needed on Agile projects? Well, I'm going to answer that question in more detail. On September 6th, it's the next Modern Analyst webinar that I'm going to give. So stay tuned, same time, same place, but different date, September 6th, and I'll go into it in more detail. So hang on to that question. We will come back to it in just a moment. The great American writer, Henry David Thoreau, Walden Pond, Civil Disobedience, if you're familiar with them, he said, each generation laughs at old fashions, but religiously follows the new. Fashions come and they go. Something becomes the latest and greatest and the rage, and then it fades and dies, only to be repackaged as the next latest and greatest fashion. To illustrate what I'm talking about, I have a little fashion show, and I want to begin in the 19th century when Thoreau lived. If you look at the person in the center, he's got curly hair and a mustache, and the corner of the picture is covering up the A in the David. Look at him. Well, I know a lot of people who look like that in the 1970s. And if you look on the bottom right hand, that big hoopy thing in the 1950s, this was called, got repackaged and was called a horsehair crinoline. If you look at the women on the bikes, the one on the right hand side, she's wearing this big belt in the 1950s that was called a cinch belt, and they actually have made a reappearance more recently. For men, facial hair, definitely the fashion. It didn't matter if it was a mustache or those mutton chops, I think they were called, the long sideburns, different kinds of beards, but definitely facial hair. Okay, let's move on to the 1920s. And just by the way, parenthetically, I've taken pictures from around the globe here, different countries. So 1920s for women, short hair, short skirts, even boots, short skirts and boots. We'll certainly see them again. For the men, we have very little facial hair, if any, and three-piece vested suits, all the rage, particularly pinstripes. Well, three-piece vested pinstripe suits for men, very popular in the 1970s, and the vest coming back, seen a lot of it lately, a lot of repackaging going on there. If we move to the 1960s, I'm sorry, little technical difficulties. Okay, so let's move to the 1950s, and we can see the wide cinch belts, we can see the crinolines under the wide skirts, and cat's eye sunglasses, sunglasses and regular glasses were all the rage. Colors too, purples and blues and oranges. The 1960s, we have long hair for both men and women. For women, short skirts and boots. For men, also boots, but for both men and women, bell-bottom pants. 1970s and 80s, that long hair became biggest hair. The bell-bottom suits became leisure pants, and the color orange was pervasive. I mean, we had orange carpets and orange appliances, orange refrigerators, orange. By the 1980s, we laughed at the color orange, and it made a resurgence just a couple of years ago, as we all know. So new fashions are built on past fashions. And just so quickly I'm just showing from the 1950s to today, the similarities. The 1960s, the short skirt and booth till today, the tie-dyes from the 70s, the wide shoulders from the 80s. I never thought I'd live to see those again. The skirt suits from the 1990s with the V-necks and the trim at the wrists. All fashions, they get repackaged, they're based on past fashions, and what in the world did all of this have to do with Agile? Well, the same thing is true with methodologies. Every methodology is a repackaging of something that came before, and each one of these was the latest, the greatest. There was never going to be anything better than that. And now we have Agile. Now, Agile in its form will probably get repackaged. It already has in certain ways. The thing that's different with Agile, it seems to me, is that with past methodologies, it was recognized how important BAs were to the success of the project. With Agile, particularly when it first started out, there was a thought that we don't need BAs on an Agile project. It was almost like, hey, no BAs allowed on our projects. But of course, they found out fairly quickly that they needed business analysis, and many organizations have realized more recently that, yeah, it's really helpful, particularly on a project of any size, to have a BA working side by side with the development team, with the product owner. And again, this is just a snippet of the jobs that I found relating to organizations wanting Agile BAs. So just to recap our 5 trends. We have the digital BA, the BA role in a DevOps environment, certifications in the gig or freelance economy, Agile business cases, and the Agile BA. I want to end with some observations from past trends presentations. Now, I've been giving a trends presentation since 2015 every year. I change it every year. And we've been writing articles, trends articles, since 2009, many of which have been published in Modern Analyst. So in 2015, I said the overarching umbrella trend was innovation. All the trends led up to the fact that organizations really wanted to be innovative. And in order to be innovative, they needed really to move towards an agile environment. I mean, we needed business agility, and you need project agility to support business agility. In 2016, I said, you know, boy, to be innovative just for the sake of being innovative, to disrupt just for the sake of disruption, to be agile, just to say that you're going to be agile is very, very costly. It has a huge cost. So it better add value. The big word in 2016 was value. Last year, I talked about choices. And I talked about that BAs, and again, I just thought this was so cool. BAs could be in large organizations, or they could be out on their own in the gig economy. They could be strategic BAs or strategic partners, or lots of different things within the organization. Focus on process or data, just business analysis, a lot of different choices. All of these things are still true. I mean, we're still talking about innovation, we're still talking about value, we still have a lot of choices. This year, my theme is that business analysis has always been needed on projects, always, always, always. And it will always be needed on projects going forward, always. We may not have the title BA, but our work is going to be needed. So I think we have covered the objectives, and I am going to turn it back to Sandy.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. What great trends to be aware of in today's industry. Sincerely, a lot of food for thought. You know, a common thread you just heard among the trends that Elizabeth mentioned concerns agile development. And an ongoing trend in business analysis is the need for more and more agility, especially with Agile and Scrum methods. Watermark Learning has recently revised our Agile BA course with up-to-date topics and techniques, and it aligns with the current IIBA Agile extension, which also prepares you to pass the IIBA AAC certification exam. Now, this course blends the knowledge and skills you need to be effective on the job, as well as to pass the AAC exam. In addition to the IIBA AAC, we offer Agile certification study tools and courses on PMI ACP, CSM, and CSPO, as well as many other BA and PM certifications. And remember, business cases are important even in Agile. And we offer a 5-step approach in our Bulletproof Business Cases course that will help you contribute to your organization's bottom line. For any information and more information on these topics covered in today's presentation, please visit us online at watermarklearning.com or contact us at info@watermarklearning.com. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Elizabeth. Just a quick reminder, if you do have any questions, you type them into the question box. Elizabeth, we do have a lot of questions already, so I'm just going to start from the top. Leanne is asking, can you explain more about the degree of security you mentioned earlier on in the presentation?
Sure. That was, yeah, there was nothing else with that question, just curious.
And
okay.
what kind of degree?
Again, it seems to me that if we are digital BAs, security is like of utmost importance, and whoever our security stakeholders are, whether it's a separate business unit in the company, cybersecurity is huge. And I know we are going through cybersecurity fatigue. I mean, I just was reading an article about that this morning, but it's still a huge issue, and digital trust is a huge issue, and it's still going on. I mean, we all know about Facebook, and we all know that these things, when we build our applications, again, if we're going to use the digital technologies, there's a lot I could be talking about. How do we know? I give a whole presentation on the digital BA. How do we know that our algorithms are going to be such that and our models are going to be such that, you know, are they going to be secure? Are they going to emphasize the things that we want them to emphasize, etc.? So it's a very different world from the one that, if you will, I grew up in relating to security. So cybersecurity, digital trust, yet balancing that trust with a great user experience. And making sure that we are in constant touch with our security officers, our security stakeholders, just a little bit different.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Our next question comes from Joshua. What is the greatest resistance shown by upper level management to incorporate current trends in business analysis?
There's a lot here. There's a lot here. Okay, boy, which way should I take this? I could almost take each one of the trends and talk about it. So the first one for digital, again, I think people do not recognize the extent that we are needed or business analysis is needed, and there is a tendency in many organizations just to go out and say, okay, this is just an example, we're going to be doing predictive analytics, and we understand that data is really important, but they don't even think about the processes that are needed to support the predictive analytics, just as an example. So there's resistance to spending time. We've been thinking about that. Yeah, we do need BAs to help with what do we have now? How's it going to change? I mean, the things we've always done, but it relates to the digital. So that's one area of resistance. Okay, we're just going to go hire a data scientist, or we're going to hire a BA and make them you are now a data scientist, and disaster, failure, a mess. DevOps, boy, culturally, that's huge. That's huge. And so from management to think about having people from the different IT areas actually involved, or the expense of a tool chain. I mean, all these things. Yeah, DevOps sounds great. Agile sounds great. For Agile even, I've seen resistance. No, let's just get things done quickly, and they don't realize what a huge organizational cultural change. And a lot of, I would say, of these trends, in order to adopt them, there is a huge organizational cultural change that is required. I don't know if that answers it. I could go on. Maybe if there are other questions, I can come back to it if we're out. But
excellent. We actually do have another question on trends, Elizabeth. So I thought I would just jump in there.
Sure.
Yashua is asking, what do you think are the future trends for BAs in 2019 or over the next 3 years, so that the BAs can be well equipped to support the organizations?
Yeah, that is a really, really good question. We're just starting to look at trends in our organization right now. A lot of these are still going to be good. I mean, we're still going to be talking about DevOps. I'm going to come up with new trends for next year, but we're still, you know, DevOps is still going to be a trend more and more. I would say even 6 to 9 months ago, you'd ask in a presentation how many of your organizations have adopted a DevOps environment. You get very few hands. Now that has changed significantly. Blockchain might be something else. That's something that is on the horizon, I would say, that we might want to think about how business analysis would help with that. You know, Agile is still going to be a trend, but it's going to be, it's going to morph, as I think it already has. Let's see what else I'm hearing out there. Well, let's leave it at that for now. And yeah, again, the things I'm hearing about, the popularity of DevOps, still that's going to grow. As far as certifications, that's going to be interesting as a trend, because I think there are going to be some new ones out on the horizon. Certainly IABA is no doubt going to be coming up with some new ones. I would not be surprised in the area of certification to see certifications from other organizations right now. Scrum Alliance is getting a lot of certifications. There are other organizations out there, and I think that they're going to gain popularity. So that's something, again, for BAs to be thinking about, because I think we have to participate on Agile projects, and the more we know about them, the better off we are.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Next question, actually, which refers to about certifications. And I know you have that great slide up right now, but Tina is asking, what are the top 3 certifications to have, in your opinion, as a BA, but for the gig economy specifically?
Okay, so a lot depends on where you are. So let me just say that there are different parts of the world that recognize different certifications. If you're in like Europe or the UK, having Prince for project management is probably a very good thing, whereas in North America that is not as popular. I know that in different parts of the world, like in India, there are very state-specific organizations that where it helps to have certifications. In general, if I'm going out in the gig economy, I'm going to want, honestly, I'm going to want something, if I'm in North America, from PMI and something from IIBA. I'm going to want them both. And I'm going to want something Agile. I think those 3 are the ones that I would focus on. Those are the ones that we tend to hire. Thanks. When we're looking for people. Yeah.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Our next question comes from Candy. It definitely sounds like we need to focus on technology, but in terms of soft skills and/or competencies, which one rises to the level of needing a BA's attention the most? Brackets, if there are any. Mm-hmm. And then also, thank you. This is a great presentation. So.
Oh, thank you. Definitely influencing, exclamation mark, influencing. I do view our jobs. I use that definition in the BABOK because I love that definition, defining problems, recommending solutions. That's being a trusted advisor. Our job is to influence. So I would say influencing skills, number one. If I had to choose some others, conflict resolution is very important. Negotiating, those are important. But again, just as a BA, and just parenthetically too, I started out my career as a management consultant, and then I got into business analysis, such a great transition. The ability to influence is like, I can't think of anything else that's more important, really.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Our next question, I just wanted to. David asked, are business analysts naturally suited to be Scrum Masters as well in the new Agile world, or should business analysts move in that direction?
That's very much my topic for September 6th, but in a nutshell, I'm going to say no. And if you hang on and join me September 6th, I will tell you why. But no, I don't, that's not my favorite role my favorite role for a BA on an Agile project is being a BA, doing business analysis work. And I go into that in a lot of detail. I'll go into it next month. Is that fair, Tracy, to say that?
Elizabeth, I think that's excellent. And you can go on the ModernAnalyst.com website to find the link to the next webinar as well, if you don't have it. We do have more questions, and I am just trying to quickly read through them.
Okay.
Ashwin asks, how do you relate certifications to experience in the resume?
Hang on, let me just think about this one second. How do you relate certifications to your experience? Okay, probably coming from when I said, well, you know, they're good at taking exams. I think that's actually a really good question if I'm getting what you're asking. So if I have, let's say, my CBAP, Certified Business Analysis Professional, I want something in my resume that talks about the experience that I've done helping organizations with business analysis, particularly, again, if I'm in the gig economy, I want to relate it to how I have influenced and helped the organization realize that business analysis is important. And certifications are important because we're all talking the same language, makes it easier, So I would definitely, so if I am a CSM and I don't have any Agile experience in my resume, that's going to look a little funny. There's going to be a mismatch there. So definitely whatever your certifications talk about your experience. Now, that's kind of a catch-22, kind of puts us in a bind because I know a lot of people going out in the gig economy say, okay, well, maybe I should be a PMP or a PMI PBA, but I don't have any experience, but that's going to help me get a job. And I'm going to say to you that it is really important to have a certain amount of experience and not just have the letters after your name. So
thank you, Elizabeth.
Hope that helped.
Excellent. We have another question about skills, and I just want to jump back to it. I know you have discussed it a little bit. Peter asked, is there one key BA skill that is most important to be successful in Agile projects?
Okay. I'll just think out loud for a second because my mind jumped to the fact that there are, and I cover this next month too, a lot of myths relating to business analysis on traditional projects. And it is that a lot of people think that business analysis is synonymous with documentation. I don't think that's true, but let me say this. As a BA, regardless of the project type, whether it's Agile or traditional, whatever, we have to be flexible. We have to understand the importance of business agility and support that. We have to understand, and again, I think it's a myth that changes on Agile projects, you know, that BAs and PMs don't like changes. That's not true. But that flexibility, that ability to react for the good of the organization is just, I think, a really important skill. And if you have been in an organization on a traditional project where things were you had cumbersome, overly cumbersome business analysis processes and requirements management processes and tools, that might be a harder transition, but I don't think it's on a basis of having worked on traditional versus agile projects. So, but that flexibility, that understanding that, yeah, we're going to do the right amount of documentation. We're going to do the right amount of elicitation and et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Akram. In my organization, BAs who represent the business side are separate from the BAs who represent the technology side. Right. Has the distinction between these roles been common in the past? And it sounds like from your presentation, it seems that this distinction is blurring between the two.
Oh, that's a great question. So, yes, there are organizations where like a business systems analyst was different from a systems analyst. There were organizations in the past where they were really business. I mean, business BAs that were housed in with the business versus the technical ones. In my experience, right from the get-go for me, that was not the case. I was a BA in the IT area, so I had I was never a programmer. I never came up through those ranks, but I was able to translate technical concepts into business language for people. So it depended. Yes, it was there in some organizations in the past, and even today, yes, the lines are blurring. The idea of being a business-only BA, if you want to get into the digital world, is a very old-fashioned concept, or even in Agile world, it seems to me. It's an old-fashioned concept. Forgive me for saying that. But yeah, yes, that's blurring for sure.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We're almost running out of time. I'm going to ask one more question from Beth. Beth asked, you mentioned that estimating cost is much easier on Agile projects. And can you explain, for Agile projects I've worked on, management still need to estimate total project cost before the project is started, or at least the outset of the project?
Sure. And in many organizations, that's the case, and it's going to continue to be the case, again, for budgeting reasons. Again, it's that mindset. The idea that we are going to have more or less like a rolling wave is what we've called it in the past, where we give an estimate knowing that as we get through the iterations, that as we add things, as things change, that things are going to change. So there's less of a mindset that that initial cost is cast in concrete, and many organizations are going through processes, project processes, where they're taking that into account for budgetary reasons, sure. And government organizations, they have to budget 2 years in advance, perhaps, for some state organizations. And so that is important. But the idea that, yes, things are going to change. And so that's what I think makes it easier. We are going to give an overall estimate, but as we know more, we'll keep you updated with what those changes are. Because things do. I mean, new stuff gets added to the product backlog and et cetera. Yeah.
Excellent, Elizabeth, and thank you so much. We've just run out of time, so I'm going to wrap up today's session. We would like to thank Elizabeth for such a great presentation today, and also to thank Watermark Learning for sponsoring today's event. We hope that you'll join us at our next event in September. And we'd like to thank everyone for attending today's Modern Analyst webinar. And I'd like to remind everyone that today's webinar, along with the slides, will be archived at the ModernAnalyst.com website within a few days. And that concludes today's event. We hope that everyone has a great day.